From cigarette taxes to changing the process for picking our judges, from health insurance exchanges in Missouri to the taxing of boats in Kansas. These are the other choices you'll be asked to confront as you head to the ballot box on Tuesday. We sort through these pesky, wordy ballot questions on this pre-election edition of Week in Review and take a look at some of those other races no one seems to pay much attention to, but you'll be asked to make a choice on this election day. Stay with us. As much useful information as we can cram in 26 minutes or less coming your way. Welcome everyone, I'm Nick Haynes. We've made it this far together. Can we make it till Tuesday? We know there are so many places you can turn to hear about the presidential election and the race for United States Senate in Missouri, and increasingly for governor. This half hour, we're going to concentrate on those other pesky choices that often leave you scratching your head or possibly breaking out in a cold sweat when you enter that polling station because you simply weren't expecting them. To help you avoid those surprises are Lynn Horsley, who helped write the Star's 2012 election voter guide, Kansas City Star reporter, blogger, and political columnist Dave Helling, and KCTV5 chief investigative reporter Stacey Cameron. Thank you for helping us sort this through with us. There are a slew of ballot questions you are being asked to consider, particularly on the Missouri side, and the biggest of them all is whether or not to raise the cigarette tax.
Tobacco-related illness in Missouri costs taxpayers $532 million a year.
But Barber argues it'll actually cost Missouri more by missing out on sales tax money.
This will probably be the end of us. We'll probably regroup and go back to the Kansas side.
Both sides of that debate from that excerpt from NBC Action News. Currently, Missouri has the lowest tobacco tax in the nation. Proposition B would raise the state tax on a pack of cigarettes from 17 cents to 90 cents. The proposal is projected to generate between $283 million and $423 million annually. But Lynn Horsley, where would the money go?
Well, the ballot language says it's supposed to go to schools, universities, and some to prevention. Now, just this week, some legislators have been saying this is an initiative. Once the legislature comes in session, we can change that. We don't necessarily have to follow the will of the people. Of course, the proponents of this are outraged by that. I think we'll kind of have to see how, by the margin of victory, if it passes. If it passes substantially, the legislature may have to honor that. If not, we've seen other examples where they've gone back in and not necessarily honored the intent of an initiative.
You know, in the past, there's been concerns that, you know, when the casinos came in, that was going to go to education, Stacey Cameron, and they said, oh, well, it didn't go there. And now we're seeing, even in the paper today, oh, the ad saying it's going to go to Obamacare.
Right, and the reality of the matter is the Supreme Court and the appellate courts in Missouri have been pretty clear on this, that one legislature can't bind another with respect to where that money goes. So while initially we may see the money go to education, it doesn't mean it will stay there forever. So you could see it go to the general revenue. And you also have to think about back to the Missouri lottery and the casino money. That money it supplanted the money. It didn't add to education funding. So we see a lot of the times when you have propositions like this, there may be an initial increase, but then you don't see that money continue to go up. So there is concerns whether or not this will really go to education or not.
This, though, the tax, though, would still be lower than it is, so it's still much lower than it is in Kansas, though,
and in many
Dave.
other states. And proponents say, look, just as a public health measure, it's a good idea to raise the cost of a pack of cigarettes because it will convince people not to smoke as much, quite apart from this argument of where the money goes or whether they need the money. And that's the argument they've been making really for some time, that in addition to the benefits to the state, you'll get some public health benefit as well. And voters really will sort of settle that argument next Tuesday.
But we still have this issue, though, of will the money go where it's supposed to do? And we have Republicans certainly saying we have that problem. But we also have Victor Callahan, a Senate Democrat, also saying vote no because it's not going to go where we think it's going to go.
Right. Victor said that. Now, I talked to Jason Hancock, our State House correspondent, this week, and he said that the legislators who are slated to chair the budget committees in the legislature are actually for this. So his feeling is it very well may initially go where it's intended. And as Dave said, I think even if it doesn't always go where it's intended, The proponents argue that the tax right now is so low. We really have a terrible problem with people smoking in Missouri. This would be a deterrent, especially for young people starting to smoke.
Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind, Nick, is tax money is always fungible, no matter what you spend it on. That means that, as Stacy points out, it can supplant money, not increase it. So you could theoretically keep every dime of this money going to schools. It just means you spend less on schools out of another bucket of money. It is a tax increase for the state of Missouri. Voters should be clear on that. But there is this other component of raising the cost of a pack of cigarettes in Missouri to improve health in the state.
And let's make this point clear. They were wrong on their estimates of how much revenue would come in as a result of the casinos. And there's no guarantee that this is going to be 280 or 400 million. It's an estimate. So we could actually see that revenue fall. And eventually that could mean a decrease in funding to education if it's used to supplant the money that's already going there. So the education issue is always a red herring because nobody's against education. So if you see a potential sin, smoking, and we're going to tax that more because it'll go to education, well, of course, everybody's going to be through that. Politicians use that to get this kind of tax paid. So I think the proponents of it have good cause to point to this, but we do need to go back to the fact that almost $500 million a year in Medicaid-associated costs for tobacco-related illness. This is really the issue that they should be pushing to get people to pass this tax.
Well, and I think there's a strong contingent of groups that have backed this, and they say they're going to hold the legislature accountable to spend it as it's intended.
Well, some of our viewers may be confused as to why we started with Proposition B. Is there a Proposition A? Yeah. Well, the answer is yes. Thank you, Dave. And the reason we didn't start our program with that is because it could be more confusing to you, because Proposition A will ask you whether or not you want the city of St. Louis to have local control over its police force. Now, currently, it is one of just 2 cities in the country, along with Kansas City, to be overseen by a state-appointed panel. Why are people here in Lee Summit and Independence and Brookside and Parkville deciding whether the St. Louis Police Department should be under local control or not? Isn't that a decision voters in St. Louis should be making, Lynn?
Well, yes, but they answer to a state-appointed board. So the state has to weigh in on whether they can now have local control. And people in Kansas City should know that while they're voting on whether St. Louis can have local control of their police department, it does not affect Kansas City's police department, which is also governed by a state board.
So if it doesn't affect us, then should I just leave that section of the ballot blank because I don't care about that? It doesn't affect me.
No, it likely is to affect you in the future, because if it passes and St. Louis gets local control, then Kansas City remains as the only city in the country, and it's going to set the table for a change here.
And so what? So what if Kansas City is the only city in the country that has a board that controls the police department?
Well, as you know, Nick, on this show and in other places, we've argued this question for 25 years in Kansas City. Who should have direct supervision of the local police department? It is a state statute that now requires state-appointed boards in St. Louis and Kansas City. That's why St. Louis is on the ballot. But as Stacy suggests, it does set the template for whatever we do in this community. If St. Louis regains full control of its police department, the pressure in Kansas City to take a similar step through the legislature will increase dramatically.
And I don't know that there's a statewide consensus on this. The residents of St. Louis have said in non-binding referendums that they want this. But statewide, it may not pass. I think St. Louis folks are counting on the votes from Kansas City and this metro area to get them over the hump toward getting that statewide vote.
I think what's interesting here is Mayor Sly James is endorsing the proposition. He wants it to pass in St. Louis to talk about then getting local control here in Kansas City. However, it's interesting, if you go back to the election for mayor in the debate which I moderated, he was opposed to local control. He didn't think we had the resources to control it locally, and he was worried about infighting in the city council. So I wonder why the mayor has now changed his attitude on this in such a quick period of time.
But the mayor wants that, but the police do not.
Well, the police in Kansas City do not, and the state board appointees in Kansas City do not. There is not a consensus in this community yet. I think since Mayor Sly James got elected, he's realized that the city budget sends a lot of money to the police department, and he wants control over that.
Which is why we'll have to keep a very close eye on the Kansas City results on Prop A, because it could be a pretty good referendum of where Kansas City stands on this issue.
Well, let's move to Kansas now. While you won't be voting for any United States senators, governors, or any big state office holders, not to be left out, you do have a statewide ballot issue to decide involving the taxing of boats. Okay, it's not the biggest issue in the world, but you may be left scratching your head when you walk into your local polling station Tuesday and see this massive, and I mean massive, one-page ballot question on the taxation of watercraft in the Sunflower State. Should your neighbor with the speedboat or fishing boat get a tax break? Currently, a kink in the law means boats in Kansas are taxed so much higher than other forms of property that many boat owners just register their boats in Missouri or Oklahoma. This amendment fixes that. According to backers, a $20,000 boat in Oklahoma carries a $150 property tax bill, but is taxed at about $750 in Kansas. The result, there are 20,000 fewer boats registered in Kansas than there were a decade ago. So what, some people may say Tuesday. Why should I care about that, Dave?
Well, you should care only because the tax code is a little confusing in Kansas. If you have a boat, or you know someone who has a boat and you think he or she should pay less in taxes, you'd vote yes. I'm not sure it's something that's going to occupy a lot of time, even though it's a lengthy ballot measure. It is really pushed by recreational boat dealers and recreational areas. Kansas isn't a great spot for boating, so I don't know how much.
But some people might think, well, people with boats are one percenters. I'm not going to vote for that.
Well, they're not one percenters because it would affect small things like canoes and small fishing vessels.
So these are not just luxury boats?
It's not just luxury boats, and it's quite a bit of money that the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries believe they lose to places like Missouri and Oklahoma. So the money would go to that department. It's a quirk in the law that RVs and cars and other things of that nature are separated out and taxed at a lower rate, where the boats go in as other property, so it comes to a higher market value. So the state's losing quite a bit of revenue.
Can I just also say very quickly, we should pay attention to this, Nick, in part because property is classified differently in the state of Kansas for taxation purposes, not just boats. Residential property versus agricultural property, commercial property, they're all classified differently. If property taxes become a huge issue in Kansas, which is possible when the new tax cuts go into effect next year, those classifications could become part of a larger debate over how property is taxed in the state. This may be the camel's nose in the tent on that issue of classification in Kansas, which is a huge political issue, and 20 years ago was the biggest issue in the entire state.
With no state office holders on the ballot, and this being the only state issue on the ballot, is it then any wonder that Chris Kobach, the Kansas Secretary of State, predicting the lowest percentage of Kansas voters going to the polls on Tuesday since 2000?
It's not really a surprise. The presidential isn't competitive. You do have competitive, in some places, state legislature races, particularly in our area. That may increase turnout a little bit, but frankly, they're just not as visible. They don't get people quite as excited. I will say that turnout for early voting has been pretty strong. That's in our area. That suggests that there is more interest in this election than there, say, would have been in 2010.
But that's in local races.
Right, exactly right. Because the presidential, I think people sort of understand Mitt Romney is clearly the favorite in the state of Kansas.
We head back to Missouri now as President Obama and Mitt Romney have battled over the Affordable Care Act. You may not be aware that if you live in Missouri, you'll be deciding the issue of health care on the ballot Tuesday. If approved by you, Proposition E would block the governor or any Missouri agency from creating a state health exchange without approval from voters or the legislature. So what happens if you vote yes on this measure?
Well, if you vote yes, the governor cannot set up an exchange, and I think this is a reflection of Missourians' distrust of Obamacare. They don't want these state exchanges, and this is a way to send that signal. Now, if he doesn't set up the exchange and Obamacare does keep rolling along, ultimately the federal government would set up the exchange.
And so what? If the federal government sets up an exchange, don't you still get the same benefits as you would under a state health care plan?
The way the law is written, you would still get the same benefits. However, it's estimated 23 million people will get their insurance through these exchanges. The way the law is written, only people who purchase their insurance through state exchanges are going to get the subsidies. About 18 million of those people will qualify for subsidies to make their health insurance less. The law isn't clear that if you buy it through the federal exchange, you'll get those subsidies. So what happens if this passes in Missouri? Missourians likely will pay higher premiums for the insurance, just like people in Kansas are going to. And nobody's talking about this. The IRS says they can fix it, but I guarantee you, if they try without legislative change, they will get sued. Missourians in Kansas are about to pay more for their premiums.
Stacey's right. There is a dispute over how these exchanges will work, federal versus state, although it isn't clear how that language would work. And let's face it, the Affordable Care Act is bringing lawsuits all over the country. So the real question is whether Barack Obama or Mitt Romney is elected and what happens on the national level. If it appears that the Affordable Care Act will proceed, my guess is that the state legislature will give a hard look at establishing its own exchange independent of the federal government. That's a big if, but that's my guess, only because I think they'll want to have more control over it than just ceding it to the federal government. I could be dead wrong. It could be a very doctrinaire, very polarizing argument, but my guess is that's what they'll do.
Well, the problem is they have to submit their plans by November 16th, and Missouri has already pushed off a lot of federal money that would have helped them to do this.
And Kansas as well.
And Kansas as well, even to upgrade the computers that they would need to do the electronic information gathering. So Missouri, unless the federal government moves that deadline back, they're not going to be able to meet that deadline. And so in the short term, there will be no exchange.
But we did a panel on this station, but you can apply every year to do a state exchange. So even if they don't do it this time around, you could apply again a year from now, but it doesn't mean the political climate would change in Missouri and that they may not want to do that.
Right. We'll just have to wait and see what happens at the federal level as well.
You will also be asked to decide at the ballot box on Tuesday whether or not to change the system of picking higher court judges in Missouri.
Missouri's courtrooms have protected everyone equally under the law, but special interests want to change Missouri's constitution and tip our scales of justice. They're pushing Amendment 3 because they don't like nonpartisan courts they can't control. Amendment 3 gives politicians the power to pick our judges.
It's political manipulation of the Missouri court system, hand-picking judges behind closed doors in secret. Dominated by personal injury lawyers who contribute millions of dollars to politicians to buy power and handpick our judges. It's time to stop the trial lawyers and backroom deals.
Ads from both sides of Missouri Constitutional Amendment 3, which gives the governor more authority over the picking of Court of Appeals and Supreme Court judges in Missouri. If you vote yes, what difference would this make to the way the system works now?
It would mean that there would be a different mechanism involving the Senate and approval for judges at the appellate and the Supreme Court level, rather than the panel selected by the bar, which is submitted to the governor in some other ways. And I think, but the key thing to remember is those who want to change the way the judges are picked backed out of this race.
Yeah, Jason
because they decided that the
Hancock,
ballot language was too much to overcome. So there hasn't really been the debate on this that you expect.
Why did they back out?
Well, the Republican legislature wanted this on the ballot, but they left it up to the Democratic Secretary of State, Robin Carnahan, to write the language of the ballot. Then they weren't happy with the way the language was written. And so they've kind of stepped back. They're not really pushing it. I think the bar associations have come out very much against this. They feel like the Missouri plan and the current way we select judges is a model for the nation. So I think, frankly, those who want this change really are not pushing very hard for it, and it may set the stage for them to come back next year and propose direct elections of judges, which will be a whole other fight.
And let me just say, we should be very clear. The fight over how judges are picked is extraordinarily active across the country. It will
and
be
in Kansas.
The single biggest issue in next year's legislative session will be picking judges. So the Missouri vote, again, is a good barometer of where the people are.
But that is including with the Governor Sam Brown back in Kansas, though.
Yes.
Let's make this clear right now. trial court judges in the state of Missouri are elected by partisan election. This is taking the checks and balances out of the judicial system with respect to the Supreme Court and the appellate court. And it's conservative groups, the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society, that want to have these to become more like political appointees, people who either run for office or that elected officials are picked, because they don't worry about what's happening at the trial court. They want judges stacked in these courts that are going to rule on the constitutionality of things like abortion or gun control or tort reform. And that's
but don't they feel it's a small range of attorneys, a small subset of attorneys who are deciding who these higher court judges are going to be now? And that is a narrow subset of the population?
Well, that's what they say, but these people aren't elected, so they aren't subject to special interests that are funding elections. So would you rather have the attorneys, or would you rather have the money of special interests electing and choosing these people?
Well, of course, the other side would say attorneys are a special interest and that they have some vested interest in how judges are picked, and that's why they're involved. Education is another issue on the Kansas side. This is a very important thing that people need to be paying some attention to, regardless of what happens next Tuesday.
And you are going to be having to make a selection there on Tuesday on that issue, too. While Kansas has no statewide elected officials on the ballot, in Missouri you're expected to make choices for every statewide office. You've heard about Todd Akin and Claire McCaskill for U.S. Senate, as well as the candidates for governor. But what about state treasurer? How does one even weigh up a state treasurer? Clint Zweifel and Cole McNary? Who are these people? And what is the big issue that divides them? Let's start with you, Lynn.
Well, Clint is the incumbent, and he actually was elected by a very narrow margin in 2008 when the Democrats had a little bit of a wind behind their backs. He's got this is a tight race. He is up against a gentleman who is in the state legislature. You know, the treasurer is the fiscal officer for the state. Clint argues that he's done a lot for ensuring that families who are trying to get their kids into college, that they have a good program for that. And I think his opponent would like to focus on pension reform.
Why should we care about this race, Dave?
Well, only because traditionally down-ballot races give you some clue as to the rising stars in each party.
Because they become governors and United States senators,
right,
don't they?
But you know, the treasurer's job, kind of like the Secretary of State's job, is largely administrative. And so you need to pick the best administrator, and by and large, people vote party on things like that.
Well, the one thing that the treasurer will do that's very important to Missouri is they manage the state's investment funds, like with pension. And so they're both, the issue that they're really splitting hairs about is transparency in how they'll spend that money. So it is an important decision, especially when we start to see need for pension reform and how those monies are invested. We saw a lot of state treasurers across the country when the market bottomed out in 2008 who had invested that money poorly. So this is an important decision, but one a lot of people don't quite fully understand.
Some of you may be seeing the name Shane Scholer and Jason Kander for the first time on your ballot on Tuesday. They want to be your Missouri Secretary of State. Now, you could simply look at the D or R next to their names. Can we get a brief biographical sketch on these two men?
Well, Jason really wants to focus on campaign finance reform and ethics. He's very big on that.
And he's from Kansas City.
And he's the Democrat. And Shane Scholer, his big thing is photo ID for voting in Missouri.
Okay. And the big distinction between these two candidates, Dave?
Well, the reason this is important, Nick, is because the Secretary of State does write ballot language, as we just talked about with Robin Carnahan, and they often write the language, both parties do it, with a partisan slant, because the way you write that language can affect the vote. So we should pay attention to the winner here. If the Democrat wins, ballot language will be written in a certain way, a Republican potentially the other way. Court battles will ensue. That really is more partisan than, say, the treasurer's.
Well, and I think Shane has had a lot of backing from Rex Sinkfield, who likes to put initiatives on the Missouri ballot.
And wants that language written in a way that would be supportive of his efforts.
Stacey.
Well, and you see the Republican in this race wanting to see it more of a commission that would draft this language as opposed to in his office, and therefore maybe making it more ballot-friendly, understandable to people, or more likely to be passed.
You're also being asked to pick an Attorney General. Chris Koster, a Democrat, already has the job. Or should you go for someone different? That would be Republican Ed Martin, a former chief of staff to Missouri Governor Matt Blunt. But what kind of job has Chris Koster done as Missouri Attorney General, Stacey?
Well, Chris Koster has taken some heat as being Obama's attorney, and a lot of it goes back to the whole fight over the Affordable Care Act. Koster is a former prosecuting attorney, and he says that litigation experience is principal to his office. He also wrote very successful briefs votes against the Affordable Care Act that the Supreme Court and some appellate courts agreed with Missouri's decision. So, but he's come under a lot of fire as the Democrat.
How would Ed Martin be different?
Well, I think Ed, and I think his work with Matt Blunt showed this, is much more doctrinaire, much more attentive to conservative causes. He would, for example, I would assure you, would launch various legal attempts to repeal parts of the Affordable Care Act, as an example. Again, the Attorney General's job is not exactly what people think of it. It isn't as if Chris Koster is trying murder suspects, as his ads would imply. It has an administrative function and a choice function. And again, political philosophy may help guide voters' decision in this race.
We're not going to talk about the United States Senate race or governor's race on the program, as we've already talked about those. But you will be voting for lieutenant governor, and that's Peter Kinder, who at one time had great designs on being governor. He's the Republican incumbent running against Susan Monty. She's the Democrat. Tell us about her, Lynn.
Well, she was the state auditor and got voted out. I think she would like to return the job to be kind of an emphasis on the elderly and the military, which is veterans, which is where it traditionally has been. Obviously, Peter Kinder is somewhat of a controversial candidate. He wasn't successful in his governor.
Why was he controversial?
Because he had some accusations of personal misconduct, of spending money improperly, and that's why he...
Quickly, name me one thing he's done that's effective in that position.
Well, he's the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor doesn't have much really to do except to travel around the state and serve for the governor. We should change that in Missouri.
Alrighty, that's as much as we can cram into this pre-election edition of Kansas City Week in Review. Our thanks to our election reviewers, Lynn Horsley and Stacey Cameron. Thanks so much for doing this with us. Dave Helling, as always, thank you very much. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your pre-election weekend with us.